Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on this Monday, the 27th of November, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Let's find out what's going on out there in the world. Russian forces are crashing headlong into another city. You remember how they fought over Bakhmut? Back and forth and back and forth. They bloodied one hill and then bloodied that down the other side of the other hill, and well, evidently they're fighting over another city, and it says that the Russians are using similar catastrophic tactics that bloodied its army in Bakhmut. Both sides are having... There's been an awful lot of casualties in this war over a period of time. So they're still fighting it, but winter's coming. Winter's coming in fast in this region. And so they're going to be having to move to winter warfare now. Now, there's two articles here. I'm going to relate both of them together, and because they're both tied together. And one is that 25% of Americans are still paying off their 2022 holiday debt from last year. Still paying for it. 25% of Americans are still paying for it. Do you know right now that credit card delinquencies are the highest I think that they've ever been? They're absolutely they're higher than they were during the 2008 financial crisis. Right now, let that sink in for a minute. Credit card delinquencies are higher right now than they were during the 2008 crisis. That's because the potential of the crisis that we're on the front side of right now actually has more energy. I'm like a weather forecaster, for crying out loud. They tell you, hey, here's a storm coming. And according to the barometric pressure, it has a lot of intensity, more than the storm we had last year. And you say, well, the storm we had last year knocked the power out for a week. No, this one's worse. And this is the way with this financial crisis. It's got more intensity. It's got more power behind it. It's the everything bubble bursting is what it is. And real estate is an intrinsic key to the energy it's going to gain. The real estate markets. Not just the commercial real estate, which is already basically a wipeout. But then when it gets into residential real estate, which is the next step right now from where we're at. So this story right here is tied into another story. Let me see which one here. Consumers right now are using the buy now, pay later option to fund a record Black Friday purchase right now. And you can bet they're going to do the same thing at Christmas time. We're on the front side of this enormous, very black, very dark period in time that's coming, where we're going to have I can just see it coming within the financial system. We're right on the verge of it, right on the edge of it. And the intensity is greater than the Great Depression. But this time, instead of being a deflationary depression, it's more than likely going to be an inflationary depression. Now, there's a difference between the two. A deflationary depression and an inflationary depression. This is going to be an inflationary depression. It goes beyond stagflation when that happens. So here they are. They're all out there. And they're buying it now to pay later on the front side of this, what they're going into, this very dark time, and they're going to have these enormous bills to pay. On top of all the other bills they have to pay. Oh, what about when they just can't pay them? Well, we're talking millions of Americans. Millions of people in Great Britain probably too. Here in Canada as well. And they just can't pay them. When they don't pay them en masse, what happens then? Well, then the debt starts to transfer to the people who are the lenders. And they're connected with the banking institutions. And they start getting in even more trouble than they are already. This whole thing leads, and then next thing you know, it's a cascading effect, guys. The next thing you know, you get your central banks lowering rates as fast as they can. And that causes problems, mostly for the dollar, for the purchasing power of the dollar. When all eyes become on the dollar at that point, and people start to lose faith in the purchasing power of that said dollar, then the dollars start flooding back in. That's out there. There's like 20 trillion of them floating around in the euro dollar system and so on. They all start to jump off the sinking ship at that point. I mean, it's just total wipeout mess. Anyway, we got to move on because we got a lot of stories to cover today. Now, NATO nations right now are one of the NATO nations, a big one, is siding with Iran. It says NATO nation sides with the United States rival Iran over the Gaza crisis. And the nation that's siding with them looks to be Turkey. There's Erdogan sitting there meeting with the Iranian leader. This creates a very tricky situation in itself. Meanwhile, Yemen, you remember Yemen entered the war, the Houthis? Do you remember they captured a ship a number of days ago? Well, they tried to capture another one. In fact, they did capture it. But the United States, I guess, is riding into the rescue of the ship. It says ballistic missile targets United States Navy ship after it foils an attempted tanker hijacking in the Middle East. The U.S. Navy captured a group of armed assailants who seized a tanker in the Gulf of Aden on Monday, disrupting the latest in a series of attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the adjoining Gulf amid the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. And there's the tanker. There's a big one. Look, they captured. This is the second ship they were trying to capture. Evidently, they've been foiled. It says, according to the United States Military Central Command, CENTCOM, the naval destroyer USS Mason carried out the counter-piracy mission after receiving distress calls from the MV Central Park tanker early Monday. 5 armed assailants who had taken control of the tanker attempted to flee the vessel after the United States Navy demanded they release the vessel and its crew. CENTCOM said that the United States Navy pursued the hijackers and forced them to surrender, and all crew members aboard the Central Park were safe. 2 ballistic missiles were later fired into the general location of the USS Mason from the Iran-backed Houthi rebel-controlled territory in Yemen, around 10 nautical miles from the ship. So they were 10 nautical miles from the ship, which is about 11.5 regular miles away. Nautical miles are a little bit bigger, longer. They fired. The missiles flew at the USS Mason, which is a United States ship. And evidently maybe they missed or they were shot down. Okay, moving on. Starlink's become the big thing in war. I can see it. This is a very important piece of equipment in warfare. Starlink. It enables your army to communicate even if regular telecommunications are cut. And so Elon Musk has become the center of attention here because they want Starlink for Gaza. The soldiers, the Israeli soldiers in Gaza evidently want Starlink. It says Israel hosted Elon Musk on Monday, saying it had reached an agreement in principle for using his SpaceX company's Starlink communications in Gaza, where a pause in the war against Hamas coincided with the tech entrepreneur's visit. Musk's office hasn't yet to comment on the trip. Israeli President Isaac Herzog has scheduled an afternoon meeting with Musk, and they will be joined by relatives of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, and will also discuss the need to act in combat rising anti-Semitism online. Herzog's office said. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also is due to meet Musk on Monday to discuss the security aspects of artificial intelligence and hold a live online discussion, Netanyahu's office said. So there's what's happening with Starlink. Starlink, evidently, is more valuable in warfare now, in modern warfare, than tanks. I would say. Because it allows them to use their drones in operation, the operational theater, even if the internet lines are cut. Evidently, they have to see drones nowadays. They use internet links. You know, they link to the internet, and you can link them to a cell phone. They can get a cell phone, and they can have their drone flying off and observing the enemy up in the air from their cell phone. It's all linked through the internet. Starlink can't be cut. And so for armies now, you know, I mean, all of the internet you're watching me on right now comes through cables. These cables are laid underneath the ocean, and they're land-based as well. You cut those cables, the internet's gone. And in warfare, that's they consider, when war really gets out of hand, those cables would be considered a fair game. But the Starlink comes down from the sky. And how do you cut that? You can't cut that. So, you know, if war spreads all over the earth, say there's a World War III, I don't know, some sort of a nuclear situation or whatever, they can still have satellite communications, the armies. Whereas us, a typical citizen, we're going to be in the dark. But isn't that the way it always is? We're always the ones in the dark. We're always the ones having to pay for all of their nonsense. And what I mean by nonsense is things like excess spending, and they put it all on the government's tab. Speaking of which, you know, United States is going to have one heck of a big bill coming up. They got to pay, and it's all put on the tab. They always just put it on your tab. You're going to pay it. They're going to come knocking on your house with their new thousands of new IRS agents. Come knocking on your door, trying to squeeze money out of you, and you haven't got any. You're still paying for last Christmas. You know? Because they want to build some sort of new weapons system or whatever, or they got to pay for a bunch of refugees, or they got to. It's endless, the money they want, and then they're just going to put it on your bill. Hundreds of billions of dollars they're spending over and excess above their budgets. Put it on the bill, boys, but squeeze the blood out of that poor turnip. Whatever drop he's got left, that one little drop. Maybe they want that extra $1,000 that you haven't got. They're going to come knocking on your door to get it, while they're spending hundreds of billions on the other side, floating out the other side, and just put it on the tab. Can you see where this is unsustainable? Totally unsustainable and leading to a crisis of mega proportions. Now, that flu in China, I'm saying that flu because nobody knows what the respiratory illness is that's causing flu-like symptoms and pneumonia in children. Nobody knows yet. But Beijing says that it's the recent cluster of respiratory infections are caused by an overlap of common viruses such as influenza virus, rhinovirus, and respiratory syncytial or RSV, bacterial infections, they're saying. And you know, they might be right. This could be. And I'll tell you why. Back in 2020, we went through the COVID crisis. And you remember they went through what they called social distancing and mask wearing? Well, it didn't have a very, uh, it, how do I word this? COVID is a very tiny virus particle, smaller than 1 micron. And your typical masks you wear, not even talking about, I'm talking about the good masks, only filtered down to like 3 microns. And the cloth masks, heck, an elephant could pass through a cloth mask. They didn't do nothing. But the good masks, and if they're fitted properly, an awful lot of people don't even know how to fit them in the first place. There's air leaking in and around every side of the thing because they don't press it down properly around their face. It doesn't make a proper fit. Nobody cares about the real science. The real science is that those masks that we were wearing do stop these larger particle things like the bacterial infections. They do stop that, and they do have an effect on stopping the flu too. We were all wearing the masks and stuff and doing social distancing, and it just destroyed the flu. The flu, and also it destroyed these bacterial infections. They couldn't spread. COVID was making it. COVID was still spreading, obviously, because everybody caught it. But these other viruses, they just couldn't manage to make it through that. They lost their avenue of transmission, was cut. And so we went several years with almost nobody having the flu, almost nobody having all of these hundreds of bacterial pneumonia infections, mycoplasma pneumonia, and all these different infections that they get. We didn't have those. And in order for people to maintain their immunity to these, you have to have them. But if you don't have them for several years, especially kids are vulnerable, the immune system is not ready for that. To have suddenly remove the masks and everybody's coming close together again, and they start to spread these things that we've had all along, like influenza and rhinoviruses and stuff. They start to spread wild because they haven't been around for a while. They're new. It's almost like they're newly introduced. They have a field day then. So that's very much what this could be. I'm not saying that's what this is, but the Chinese might be right when they're saying that that's what this is. That very well could be what this is. But don't underestimate the power of the regular flu, and don't underestimate the power of these bacterial infections. The Black Plague was caused by these bacterial infections, and you know how many people died in Europe, but that was before the days of antibiotics. But still dangerous. Very dangerous. Now, we're moving on, and I wanted to show you guys this. Move my head just a little bit. Each dot on these maps is showing them like as a person. Each one's 8 million people. Look up here in Canada. It's Nobodiesville. Especially and they're all clustered to the south side of Canada, near the United States border, all the way across. Nobody up here. It's almost like Siberia. But now look out in Asia. Look at they're all packed in there like sardines. Asia's got 590 of these little people. Each one represents 8 million people. All of North America, this includes Mexico and Canada and the United States of America, only has 75 compared to 590 in Asia. This is the population. I just wanted to show you this, where all the people are on Earth. Where are all the people? They're mostly in Asia. They're not in Europe. Africa probably comes in second with the amount of people. Africa's pretty well populated, but Over here in North America, there's especially, oh my gosh, here in Canada, we got nobody. All you hear is echoes. You know, I'm going to tell you guys what. I was thinking about this. I think that this crisis that's coming is going to be basically a blackout. That's what I think's coming. I think that everything's just going to, all of our modern conveniences, our electrical grid, our cell phone communications, everything's just going to stop functioning properly when this crisis really hits. I think it's a little ways out there yet, but when it really hits, I think it's going to be really bad. The best place to be in a crisis like that is as far away from people as you can. Man, I'll tell you, you just head up north here in Canada, and you're going to be no people around. As soon as you cross over, say north of 50, the 50th parallel, it's just woods. That's all it is. Woods, moose and bear, and nothing else. Nobody, no people. The worst places to be when the grid goes down permanently and it come back on is the denser your population in your area is the worst it's going to be. And if your population is anyway, that's what's going to make it worse, you know. Anyway, we got to get into the markets today now, and we're going to take a look at the silver price. You know, silver's $24.58. It's up 26 cents on the day so far. It's getting up a little bit pricey. If you guys are still buying. But, you know, ultimately, I think in the end, you're not going to care what you paid on this end, whether you paid $23, or you paid $28, or you paid $32 an ounce. It is not going to matter that much. What's going to matter is you got some. That's the potential of silver and gold in this what's coming. It can actually save your life in what's coming. $2,007 for gold. It's up $5.20. You know, there's been an awful lot of people who having a little pocket full of gold has actually saved their life in crisis situations. Being serious with you guys right now. Taking a look at crypto, Bitcoin is just barely. It's trying to hang on. It's seen a little bit of downward pressure now. It's at 37,020. Ethereum is at 2015, and XRP is at 60.2 cents. Now, the Dow Jones today is down 83 points at 35,306. So we're seeing the market start to turn downward just a little bit. Taking a look at crude oil, it's off 41 cents to the downside, 75.13. Now, this is something that could really shoot up in price if these nations in the Middle East start to cut off the shipment of oil. Watching for that. Bonds and rates today, we're looking at the U.S. 10-year at 4.42. It's down 5.5 basis points. And the U.S. 30-year is at 4.57, and it's down 4.1 basis points on the day so far. And taking a look at our dollar index, it's at 103.42. And the dollar today is going sideways. This has been your show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate my audience out there. I got a lot on the agenda for today and a lot of things to do, but it's pouring rain and windy today. 80-kilometer-an-hour winds. Well, that in miles per hour, that's around, I think it's around 45 or 50-mile-an-hour winds. So pretty strong gusts. And it's not steady wind like that, you know. But you're getting gusts. You hear them inside the house, the gusts hit the house. A little bit worried my power might go out. I hope not. There is people around me who have their power out right now because of the wind. Woolly weather, I call it, you know, when the temperature, you know, is like in the 40s and it's windy like that. Woolly weather, but I probably get out in it this afternoon, try to do a little bit of work, duck in and out between the showers. Okay, thank you guys for watching. You guys are the greatest. And we'll catch you guys on the what they used to say. They used to catch you on the flip side or whatever. They used to say in the old days during the CB days, you know. Remember the CB radios from the past? Boy, those were the days. Breaker 19, all that kind of stuff. My old CB handle back in those days was Radar Racer. I used to, and yeah, I had CB radios, but I was just a kid back then, you know. I mean, I was only like 18, 17, 18 years old. It was a CB craze, and everybody was on them, and everybody was talking on them. And nowadays, you can tune in. The only thing you're going to hear mostly is truckers, and it's only going to be occasional sporadic signal. But back then, there was signals everywhere. Everybody was on the thing talking all the time. It was a craze, you know. It was like hula hoops. Great fun it was, you know. Anyway, that's a craze I wouldn't mind them bringing back. Catch you guys in the next show. Have a great afternoon. Bye bye, guys.